Coming out of the lockout in 05-06, the National Hockey League was revamped and reloaded. Started off by a 15-game opening night, the league exploded back out of the wilderness with one of its greatest seasons to date. And everything that made it exciting continued into the Stanley Cup playoffs, particularly for two teams. Higher scoring,
one pass, one shot, score!
More creative plays,
trying on Alfredson, to the front, he scored!
And of course, heroics. Two teams that had emerged from the Eastern Conference as the beneficiaries of the revived, exciting, and modernized NHL met each other on the biggest stage yet covered on a playoffs past episode. And they were both so similar and so uniquely tied to their era that the product they delivered is a time capsule of all things that made 2006 such a great year for hockey. Coming into round 3, there was almost nothing separating these two squads. Like, abnormally little. So who do we look at first? Anybody got a coin? Let's start with the Sabres, simply because their players have cooler names. Daniel Briere was on pace for 99 points that season, had he remained healthy through it. A super crafty, offensively gifted forward who made up in skill and hustle what he lacked in size. In his prime, he towed the line of superstar but never quite made it there. Chris Drury was of Avalanche fame, a well-rounded forward who had a long ledger of clutch playoff performance. Maxim Afinogenov was another offensive guy like Briere with great hands who led the team in points that year and was seeing his first playoff action in 5 years. It's always hard to pick defensemen, so this time I'm going to give some love to defensive D-men. Tony Ludman was in his first season with the Sabres and was entrusted with their highest average time on ice. Lastly, we have a very young Ryan Miller, who was not expected to play in the postseason at all this year, only getting his first NHL action that year, outplaying Marty Biron for the starter's role. But hey, it was the first season after a full-year lockout. There was bound to be some surprising turnovers. The Sabres organization had been stuck in limbo since their turn of the Millennium Glory. Not being a gutter team, but not making the playoffs either. Miller overperforming was a big part of their return to relevance this season. But overperforming didn't really describe anything about Buffalo in these playoffs. They were good, but their lineup had a big hole. First-line center Tim Connolly had suffered a concussion against the Devils in round 2, and would likely be out for the playoffs. That's a huge blow to the Sabres, as Connolly had scored 11 points in the 8 playoff games he was in. Shorthanded is not a place any team wants to be, but it's a place that every team will have to be at some point in order to win it all. Now to their southern counterparts. The Hurricanes, stop me if you've heard this before, had done nothing relevant since their last deep run, and yet were grinding out wins in the playoffs now just the same as the Sabres. And they were down one of their best forwards to serious injury as well. Eric Cole, scorer of 59 points in 60 games that season, was out with a broken neck, obviously done for the season. But Carolina was still able to recover during the postseason thanks to a mix of old and young blood. Eric Stahl more than tripled his output from before the lockout, and also like Briere, was obviously a skilled offensive threat. Rod Brind'Amour also had a history of clutchness in the playoffs, just like Chris Drury. Justin Williams had his best offensive season of his career, just like Afinogenov. 38-year-old Glenn Wesley rounded off a very, very experienced Carolina blue line that didn't really need to score all that much, but did on occasion. And like Ryan Miller, Cam Ward was a goalie who had no NHL experience prior to 05-06 and was backstopping his team all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. But unlike Miller, Ward's play in the regular season left much to be desired, so why is he starting now? Well, the starter, Martin Gerver, floundered against Carolina, and he was pulled. But Peter Laviolette went with the option of keeping with the hot hand. And Ward never looked back. Both teams had a similar construction, of both veterans and young talent, of the gifted and the grinding. No one thought this series would be short.
We are underway, round 3, game 1.
The series started with a really good pace.
All right, Joe, thanks very much. This is played back ahead. Pominville dead one in front on it. Hit by Pominville off the goalie. Rebound score! It was Tallinder, the third man on the play, who has connected for Buffalo.
The Sabres' speed set up their first shot and goal of the series. It was also just super chaotic, but as you've heard me say a dozen times before, chaotic goals are what get you places in the playoffs.
Team, but attack as a 4 or 5 man team. Whoa, baby.
It is Brind'Amour moving in, shooting, he scores!
Corey Stillman takes a body check to get Brind'Amour a lane to the net, and he made it count. The Hurricanes started to get into a groove, but Miller stood tall between the pipes to close out the first.
Here's Waite. He's got a man moving. It's Whitney. Waite a shot. Well off of Fitzpatrick. Stillman across. It wouldn't settle down, and then eventually was turned on goal by Brindamore. Sealed off, but it came right around in front. Kalinick shot. It went off Miller and wide.
The second period was a lot more even, mostly because Carolina just couldn't muster the same pressure that they had in the first. It's the typical story of the Game 1 home team coming out juiced and hyped up.
Shoots. Oh, it's deflected just wide.
About halfway through regulation, a few Sabres were conspicuously absent from the bench.
11, yes, they're minus a man, Mike, and it must be Teppo Numminen.
It would not be the last time that we would hear such news.
Miller, 25. Ward, 22. The youthful goaltenders, and it's Briere moving in. He put it under the crossbar and in. Briere with the goal.
Watching Daniel Briere play is such a treat. The guy's like a bar of soap, and he's somehow got this puck perfectly over the crux of Ward's arm to retake the lead. Carolina didn't get much going for the rest of the period, and Buffalo threatened to widen their lead.
7 on this team. A feed in front. Oh, and it's lost by Dumont.
All of a sudden, everything opened up.
It's 1-1. Here's Williams moving in. Little pass in front. And Cullen can march on ahead with it, lay it on across for a quick shot from Ward, and a headhunter. And a rebound. Popped right back out in front. And it seems that the whole world overskated. As back ahead now comes Briere to 3-on-2. Gibson on back, takes the shot. Oh, he roots that one off the pipe. Back comes Waite, has Wesley in deep. Angled over Troyman and went off his skate on the pass from Whitney. Then again into Ward. Aaron Ward shot off the glove of Miller. New puck in front. Save Miller. Rebound is blocked aside by a Finneganov. They're trying to put the fire of attack out. Here's Williams. Front door. Rebound unable to get the rebound shot away with Stillman. Back ahead comes Chris Drury. Drury drops. It's taken and thrown in front of Drury. Crosses on and full checked away. Got to the scrap for and eventually bringing it up is Hatch. Jokenhead picks up McKee out of the box. McKee crosses now. Shoots. He scores! Jay McKee!
Patience, patience, patience from Jay McKee gave the Sabres a little bit of breathing space. Somebody must have told them that a 2-goal lead is the worst in hockey because they brought it all the way until the end of regulation.
Yeah, threw one off the board, another try, blocked by the defense in the goal crease. My goodness, Commodore centered one and went through the crease line. To the back drive by Hennigan, the score! It went off one of the Sabres in front, I think.
Carolina got a really lucky break shorthanded, but would it change the bottom line? No. A disheartening first effort for Carolina. The back half of the game really got away from them aside from a few sparks of momentum. Unless you're really lucky, though, that's not a recipe for success in the playoffs. But credit to the Sabres, they were pretty consistent for the whole 60 minutes, and Ryan Miller was continuing to solidify himself as the guy for the black and red. But the series wasn't even close to being over. Aside from the series score, one game is almost meaningless. As usual, the crowd was ready to split some ears for Game 2. Unfortunately, the sequel started off with a lot of whistles, so no first face-off burst for them like last game.
Head by a game in the series. Whoa, baby!
3 down and 2 of them shaken up and a penalty coming up.
Oh, Brett Hennigan got absolutely flat-out tattooed. He didn't have the puck.
A yard sale-like play from Ales Kotelik sent the Sabres shorthanded. Nothing like the man advantage to rectify a slow game.
Work to the outside once more and handled by Stillman. Then back it comes to Cullen. Hands it over to Caberlet. Drive, score!
This is not the kind of goal you would expect Ryan Miller to give up. But he did. Another ill-advised penalty went up on the board, and the Sabres tried to even it up before the intermission.
Point. He hasn't had to be acrobatic. Miller has. Shot, deflected, score! A power play goal. It may have been Roy at the side of the net who got it.
It was a lucky bounce off Vanek, but the Sabres were due. Tough goal for Carolina, who had just gotten some momentum. But they wouldn't go quietly.
After that one's released. Oh, and all alone is Stahl! Save made by Miller. He goes back, but he keeps the puck out.
The intermission saw them reset and come out, guns blazing. It was only a matter of time before they beat Miller.
Couple of 12s challenge one another. Stahl and Kotelik. Here's Waite swaggering in front. Backhander stopped by Miller. Rebound. It's forced wide as Wesley came breezing in. Now wait across for another shot by LaRose that is blocked aside by Miller. Onto the back, another shot. Hit and sent flying in the air was Drury. Moore got in the way. It's got a man all alone. Breaking on in. Cannot finesse it by. Now it's Wade once more. Hands it on back. Stall a shot. Deflected. Score! Ray Whitney.
Look at Stahl. The whip and the stick. There's the deflection of beauty by Whitney.
To the outside now. It is Cullen setting up. Whitney for the goal. Ray Whitney with a blast.
This was the Carolina Hurricanes that the world was more familiar with. Riding off the back of a raucous atmosphere that the fans created and absolutely not letting up. The Sabres would survive the second without getting opened up further, but that wasn't much consolation. In the last 10 playoff games, the Hurricanes had only allowed 2 third-period goals. The Sabres would have to match that 10-game total in 1 to even tie it.
Drury to the back. McKee is shot. Get it. Did it go over the line? No. Played back across now for a Buffalo attack. Roy nicely done by. Backhander was turned aside. Brought back ahead now by Williams. Off the glove. Score!
But a big boo-boo from Miller would seal the game. A last-second goal made this game look a lot more respectable than it was. It was Carolina's game. Now the Sabres, at long last, were returning to their home crowd. But without Connolly, without Kalinin, without Numanen, how would they perform, even though they managed to get a split away from home? The Sabres wouldn't have the fans wait long before their first chance.
Handed on back for the pitch further by Tony Ludman. Brought on and swung to Briere. Oh, he couldn't get a shot away as he was decked down to the ice.
But aside from that opening chance, the Sabres didn't get much sustained pressure. Lots of entries, but just as many quick exits.
Nearly 5 minutes played in this first period. Carried back on by Hest, and a shot is snagged.
Then the Sabres took 3 straight penalties, which admittedly were pretty soft calls. But eventually, the Sabres' anger would yield some retribution.
Just past Briere, who was at the front of the net, and a healthy hit from McKee. Pominville hands it to Kodalik with a shot of it by rebound. Oh, that was off the post on a shot by Briere.
You get that fucking keeper down 200 feet away from their goaltender.
Puck played and shaken and and it's off Miller and in, drawn out of the corner and into the cage by Corey Stillman.
But Carolina just got the bounces. It's just one of those busted goals. They happen, and they'd been kind of common to this point in the series. If the Sabres played with bounce-back energy in any of these 3 games, though, it was this one.
Dropped it back to Kodalik, wrist shot, score! Deflected in front, and a 1-1 tie!
Chris Drury with a perfect redirection to make it a 40-minute game. But this would frustrate the Hurricanes. Doug Weight would eat it trying to hit Pyatt, and then send his team shorthanded with an elbow to Gaustad. And then Mike Commodore almost compounded the error by going after Pyatt again, way after the whistle. It was a really weird breakdown in tempers that ultimately cost them.
Dumont looking to the back and giving it there for Campbell. Sweeps it across. Pominville over to Dumont. Then to Hesh. Save, rebound, score!
There's that man again. The greatest trick Danny Briere ever pulled was convincing the world that he was too small to park in front of the crease. Off the back of multiple power plays, the Sabres pushed.
Nice finesse move by Roy. Pad stopped by Ward. It is Dumont. Ahead now. Briere. Score!
Briere capitalized off a turnover. The captain was leading by example. The Sabres continued to rough up the Hurricanes and just didn't stop.
And set flying by Gaustad is Williams, and play continues. Back ahead, it is off the skate of Cullen. Oh, and knocked down is Cullen. A 3-on-2 of Beniganoff moves off. Dumont a shot, and it's saved.
And again, Carolina's retaliation would cost them.
Penalty coming up to Carolina. Rifle across now for Campbell, then to Briere. Has never had a playoff hat trick. This one is flipped on. Ash with it. Twirls to Briere. Holds and gave it across. Oh, getting a piece of that Ward. Another try. Ward bounced that one off of strength, and Commodore has it. Run off by Ludman. And a penalty coming up on Carolina. Score!
Cam Ward had been keeping it competitive to that point, but poor decisions and the discipline by his teammates saw the second period shots to that point be 1 for Carolina, 15 for Buffalo. Laviolette pulled Ward, who again wasn't really at fault for any of the goals, and Gerber came in. But Gerber was at risk of being opened up as well.
Drive, he dumped it, and it's Greer. A clean breakaway from center. Save made by Gerber. But it's back to Cullen, who walked it and threw it to save little rebound. And up with it is Palmenville. It goes through Cullen. Racing back is Derek Roy. Right in front. Save made by Gerber. Nice twisting pass to a Finneganwa. Dances and put it on goal. Gerber able to cover and then lost it. They trail by 3. Ahead comes Williams. Front save Miller. Rebound. Score! He stopped the first rebound. He could not stop.
Somehow the Canes didn't give up another trio of goals, but actually got one back. By a matter of inches, that would be all she wrote for free.
He drops it off. Wade takes it there. Shoots one. Save. Miller. Rebound. Oh, and a scramble.
So despite the cataclysmic second period, the Hurricanes were still only 2 goals behind. And that's the worst lead in hockey.
Oh, every Carolina shot has the potential of making this a 1-goal game. Buffalo has had a ton of those in succession.
But they couldn't get any sustained pressure, nor could the Sabres for that matter, as time wound down. Eric Stahl had the only grade A chance, and they missed a wide-open net, which was very unlike him in these playoffs. He got better.
Caberlet. Drive by Wade. Came off a skate. Drive. Score! Carolina has gotten back to within 1.
All of a sudden, the second period onslaught may not as well have happened.
The Buffalo Sabres already without Dmitry Kulinin. They don't have Teppo Numminen in the lineup tonight, and they lose Henrik Tallinder here late in the third period trying to protect this lead.
So Stahl breezes ahead. Stahl, who got his team back to within 1, takes the return. Moving across. Poked away by Miller, and the puck loose in the crease as the nest.
It all came down to the last minute.
Lost that. Came to the slot and shot. Was knocked down. Fed in front. The shot. Save Miller. Rebound trapped to the defense. Reached for by Miller. Can't come up with it. Nudged away by McKee. Swung on back to the point. Settled down by Stillman. Kept it alive. 15 to go. Battled for there. And it's Boston trying to sweep it out. Can't. Stillman moves it across. Drive. And that went off the glove of Miller from Stahl. Now the outside is blocked off by Boston. Rebound came back out to Cullen, and that kicked aside. 2 seconds. 1 second. It's over. Buffalo has won it.
Scoping out, Buffalo obviously had the series lead, but they were without half their starting defensemen now that Tallinder was injured as well. It had the potential to be less than half a series worth in which they lost them. Carolina knew that the Sabres would be bringing in fresh but inexperienced blood for Game 4, so it made sense that to take advantage of their inexperience, they would forecheck the absolute crap out of Buffalo. Martin Gerber returned to the net in place of Ward. Laviolette was going to ride the hot hand. He would be tested early and often.
Trying to get through 3 defenders. It's touched over to Dumont. A save made by Gerber. Dumont starts ahead. A stick flies loose out of the hands of Williams. Dumont trying to swagger by. Oh, what a save! Made by Gerber and another try. So, closed off well and a feet in front. Ricky stoned by Miller. On to the back, Aaron Ward across to Caberlet. Drive! Score! 6:54 the first. The drive by Caberlet deflected in 1-0.
Tough break for Gilson, who was only in his second career playoff game, filling in for the injured Teppo Numminen. But again, that's how it goes. 1-0.
Firing at the front of the net. A bouncer came back to Hennigan, steered on a cross for a shot. Score! A power play goal for Carolina.
A simple screen got the Hurricanes up 2-0. It wasn't really indicative of them playing well or Buffalo playing poorly. It's really as simple as they just had 2 shots that went in, and Buffalo didn't.
They pegged the shot, and it went wide and rattled all the way out to center. On back, or that might have been an odd man rush big time for Carolina. They've got Brindamore. Oh, and a great save made by Miller. And Tallinder not this season. Way to drive, pad stop, Miller, rebound, score! Driving to the front of the net and knifing that one home was Andrew Ladd.
Poor coverage by Gilson made it an almost insurmountable 3-0 lead. But there's still lots of time left in the game.
Right around the corner.
Here's Jochen Hash dropping it back for Briere. Threw it in front, it went off Campbell and wide. Nice little pass through to Eric Stahl. Moving back in, got it to Stillman, fed across. Shot is saved. One with one lone shot on the first power play, of course, the goal by Stahl. Nice move by Waite. Backhander save. Rebound set just wide by Whitney.
Chances were really sparse. It was a classic Laviolette game slowing with a comfortable lead. Telltale frustration started to show.
The type of play that might be able to electrify this crowd as they've got the guy.
Carolina could go back home with a series tie and the momentum. But could they close out the game? Or would turtling cost them?
Sped on back to the point, and it's Gilson there. Whips it across for the drive. That ricochet by bounced in front of Gerber. Stopped his man. That was Briere right on the doorstep.
By my count, that's 6 minutes of power play ice time for Buffalo and only one shot on goal.
Moving in and jamming one to the net was Pyatt. Rebound is blocked off by Gerber.
Maybe they'll put them back.
Odd man rush. Hennigan there. Fed it across. Deflected in by the defense. As trying to block it was Campbell, but it popped in. And it is 4-0 in favor of the...
So maybe Gerber is the guy for the Hurricanes. Ward had taken them this far in the playoffs, and that's to be commended, obviously. But Gerber was the starter coming into the season and was the hot hand right now, so why not roll with him? For Buffalo, do you worry that the injuries are catching up with you? Is that even a valid excuse? They largely had played even with Carolina, even in a 4-0 shutout loss. They wouldn't have long to mull it over, though, because the series was now a best-of-3. And in Game 5, finally, Planet Earth was treated to an explosion of offense that came from both teams evenly.
Cullen ripped across to Hennigan. Rich shot, knocked out in front. Oh, and Cullen unable to convert on the rebound. Brings it ahead and connects back on to Pyatt. Taylor Pyatt forced one in front that shrugged away by Gerber. Strong save by him. Shots are 2 apiece here through 6.5 minutes of playing time. Dropped ahead in a 2-on-1, bringing it in. Waite, he's got Whitney ready. Waite fed it across and it's kicked aside. Greer could not clear. Caberlet pushed it right on goal and Miller with the save there. Pyatt, long toss, brought in by Drury. Drive, score! Drury, 1-0 in favor of Buffalo. The Sabres have struck first.
For once, it seemed like an evenly played game would benefit the Sabres, as Chris Drury did Chris Drury things and got his team the lead on a great heads-up play by Taylor Pyatt.
Crossover try by Williams, hacked along by Pauline, fed back to Williams, score! Just that quickly.
Now you're talking. You could just smell that this Game 5 was going to be a classic.
Recchi threw it across for Stillman, control, deflected around in front off Brindamore.
That tonnage.
It's turned over to Roy, and the shot, score! Derek Roy, and it's 2-1 in favor of the Sabres. And for Brindamore, 5 left in the period. Brindamore crosses center, one in front, and it carried him back, and
the period wouldn't end without a Canes tying marker, but we did get some nastiness. Again, finally, which opened up the ice in the best way possible.
Even more embarrassing, yeah. Here is Ward, drive, getting a piece of it was Miller. One that is deflected in front, and a 2-on-1 the other way. Fitzpatrick back. It may become a 3-on-1. Brindamore moves it in, gets it back, drive, getting a piece of it was Miller. Meanwhile, McKee gets up, Commodore again, and that one blocked out by Miller. Taken by McKee, a little pass is knocked free by Commodore, brought in by Ludman, looks, shoots, he scores! Ludman, 3-1.
What a move by Ludman. You'd be forgiven for thinking he scored more than just one goal in the regular season. But with this goal, Peter Laviolette had seen enough, and he put Cam Ward back between the pipes. The last goalie change in the series almost saw Carolina turn it around for a win, but this time around, they had far more time on their side.
Behind the Waite. Recchi in front, score! Doug Waite to Recchi!
And it paid quick dividends. Some rough coverage from Ludman and quick reflexes from Recchi shrunk the gap. Bad news if you're a Sabre.
Shot that's blocked high by Ward.
Their perturbation turned into conviction.
Right back to the Hurricanes again, but give it right back in for Kostad near the end of his shift, and a shot is blocked down, and another giveaway, and Ward had to block that one aside. Kick back across, and here comes Brindamore. Moves in and gives to Williams, lays it on back, Hennigan, a shot that's blocked high by Miller, and he takes. Afinogenov shoves it back to Campbell. Campbell moves in, shoots, oh, he tried for the top right. With 27 to go, power play back to Caberlet, walks it on, hands it back across for Stahl's drive, score! Brindamore, tie game!
Tie game. with the trail blazed by the captain on a shot that epitomizes the word blistering. Not to be upstaged, Ward reminded everyone why he was brought in the first place.
Run ahead by Briere, dropped it back to Gilson. Turnaround shot was wide and hopped high. And then it's nudged to the front of the net, but held off by Ward. Buffalo 0 for 2 on their power play, but a chance in front. Oh, and what a save by the glove of Ward on Dumont, who walked right out in front.
The Canes responded with their own energy to close out 40.
Good defensive play twice by Fitzpatrick there. Played to the back now, and Ward spun it across. Wrist shot is knocked down by the pad of Miller from Wesley. Then taken around and hooked in front, and fanning on it was Kevin Adams.
And the third period gave us more of the awesome save.
Commodore dropped it behind Recchi there. Cullen out in front, fan on the centering pass from Recchi. Then to the back for Ward. A shot deflected, it went just wide. Dropped right back on, and coming on as Roy shoots, and a bad answer came from Ward.
But the real winner of this frame was the Sabres defense, who matched Carolina's offensive flash with punishing checks blow for blow.
Labriolet certainly likes the way that he can play.
Whitney with a feed in front, does wait, tried to bounce one off, not once but twice off Miller, and he grabbed the second one and held. There's Caberlet. Fed one in front, and it deflected around in front. Oh, and Whitney had a try at it, but was blocked by the defense.
With the Hurricanes pushing at the end of regulation, the Sabres' penalty kill came up large.
Aaron Ward drops back on defense. Kodalika pass, and here's a Pinniganov on a breakaway. Save made by Ward. Change in lines for Buffalo. The battling in of Pinniganov got loose and then couldn't get a shot away. A penalty coming up. It'll be a power play coming up.
Then it would be Carolina's turn to do the same. The best game of the series thus far provided the series' first overtime. Buckle up.
They gave it back on for Drury. Threw one in front. Oh, and a shot kicked aside. Good chance there for Pyatt. For Roy. Roy escapes. Dealt it back across. The feed in front to Jokic, and he couldn't get it home. Briere there in the corner, punched it around behind. Centering pass to Briere. Save Ward. Hands over to Wade again. Now Cullen with more room. Drive. Oh, deflected wide. Rebound in front. Score! Strawman!
The story of Carolina's production while Amanda the Good just kept writing new chapters, all the way to being one win from the Stanley Cup Final. But again, almost nothing is separating these teams. And Buffalo was going to make Carolina know it if it was the last thing they did that season, in front of their home crowd. It was the first time Buffalo had faced elimination all playoffs, so early on, Lady Luck threw them a few bones.
Both lines at the start of the game. Drury's, whoa!
Briere! Oh, and it's tapped off his stick by Hennigan.
They took the game to Carolina, pound for pound.
Brought back ahead by a Pinniganov, and a whirling pass is over to Briere, and the shot is towed away by Ward. Turnaround shot, rattling behind. Briere has that one. Janko Briere, a shot, save Ward, rebound, score!
And they would be rewarded early. JP Dumont got his first goal of the series. Having been in the box when Carolina scored the OT goal last game, the monkey was off his shoulders. Sabres threw everything they had at Ward.
Common in front! Oh, and a great save by Ward!
And he stopped everything.
Pinniganov with a shot, and another shot is lifted high, and Pyatt chased off. Big hit by Boston. Down to the ice, Kevin Adams to the back. Loopman a shot! Getting a big glove on that one was Ward!
But then momentum was arrested. A really iffy tripping call sent the Hurricanes to the man advantage. But Miller and the PK rose to the task.
Centerman looks over the traffic. What'll he do? Tries back to Stahl. Drive! Oh, and getting a piece of it was Miller. Centering pass in front. Down to the ice, Recchi. Picked up and sent to the back by Whitney. Walked on by Stahl. Sean turned aside by Drury. And he clears.
And the Sabres offense picked up right where it left off.
Off and played it to the back. McKee a shot. Deflected right in on goal and grabbed by Ward. Coming back from a concussion. Played on by Boston. Right out in front. Another shot. Oh, it's wide by Pyatt.
When it came back in the Sabres' end, Miller stood tall.
There, McKee lifted it along, but it came right back down. Here's Wade around in front. Oh, and shot. It can't get in because of Miller's glove.
Who needs bigger goalie pads anyway? The netminders, who had been such a huge part of their team's success, seemed determined to single-handedly ensure that there would be a further chapter in their team's season.
Rebound popped wide. Oh, a couple of good chances down low that time. It's back to Briere. Sidesteps one. Moves on in. Briere shot saved. Ward. Rebound save. Cover Ward. Back to Roy. Then over to Pominville for the shot that went wide. Rebound. Oh, and a backhander by Hesh. Taylor Pyatt nudged it around behind the feet and brought on and sent wide by Briere. 11:45 to go. Second period. Another turnover. Brindamore has it in front. Beats one across. Oh, and Williams couldn't get it home.
Lady Luck was just a Buffalo fan that night. I wish I had the time to put the whole third period here because it was that exciting.
Five-man rush.
Kodalika's shot and a pad answer came from Ward. Back up the wing with it. Dumont feeds it across. Pominville a shot snagged by Ward. Wait up with it there. Peels off. Wendy a drive. Turned aside by Miller. Saw it all the way and directed it to that corner. Punished as Caberlet by Greer. Right back to Caberlet. Hit by Greer again, and the fans love that.
That looked like an instant replay.
It's dug out by Stillman. Floated on back. Sent back across. Hennigan a wrist shot. He scores! Brad Hennigan with 3:53 left in the third. The game is tied.
And if it was not for Corey Stillman in behind the net, knocking the puck out of midair, that play was dead. That pass by Stillman was brilliant. So was that one. And the puck may have hit Gostad, I don't know.
Shook it back to the point. Thrown right back to him by McKee and given over to Lutman, who moves on in. Shooting! It went high and over the crossbar. Wrist shot popped high off of Lutman. Bent back in front. Brindamore shot save! Rebound poked away by Miller. Another try by Williams is canceled right out by Campbell. Carried off with 10 to go. It's bent across by Wade. It came back to him. Wade looks to the point, gives it back. 5 to go. Shot deflected wide. Whitney drives one off of Miller.
Once again, 60 minutes wasn't enough to separate these two teams. Oh look, there's another stat that shows how exactly alike these two clubs are. Funny, but the Sabres had to ensure that the series score would be the same when they walked off the ice that night.
Was hit, there'll be a penalty coming up. Delayed penalty call as Pominville went down. Is back up and stays in the play. Doug Waite will be penalized.
Like the Canes last game, the Sabres got a power play in sudden death. And like the Sabres, the Hurricanes warmed to the task. But ultimately,
motoring ahead is Briere. Lobbed one that's cut right off. Down to the ice went Williams. Followed through now by Roy, who spins. Fitzpatrick drilled it back across. Briere with it. Shoots one off the glove. Score!
ultimately, Cam Ward would be the only goalie who was beat more than once that night. But it was only a matter of time before one of those two goalies showed that they were human. But in the winner-take-all game, neither team could gamble on their goaltenders bailing them out. And neither did. Game 7 was the 100th game of the season for both teams. And of course, the injury bug bit the Sabres again. Jay McKee could not play because of a leg infection. The Sabres would be without 4 of their starting defensemen for the winner-take-all game. Carolina wouldn't have to wait long for their first chance.
Poked ahead, held back as Williams gets loose, moving on in. Oh, and that one went up over the top of the net.
There was a great pace to start Game 7, with very few whistles in the first.
They fan out, and the pass for Crumbling, and he was checked off by Caberlet.
It's the kind of atmosphere that Carolina thrived on, and the kind that the Sabres would do anything to slow down and choke off.
Run on by Daniel Briere. Briere able to gain the zone. Drops it on back. Little pass in front and went wide aboard as they tried to connect with Pominville. Then it comes to the back. Gilson fakes. Moves on in. Gilson a shot. That one turned aside. Right back with it is Gilson again, trying to keep the pressure on Drury. Threw one in front. It's cut off by Andrew Ladd. He's able to clear, but not out. Held along now by Campbell and a shot. Oh, and there was a screen in front, but it's cleared away by Glenn Wesley. Dropped along now by Drury, and then off his stick eventually across to be pitched back on by the defense, but again not out. Merritt shot safe. Rebound shot off the close by. Trying to work it free there, and does. It is Williams feeding one that is settled down by Waite. Amador a shot. Score!
An unlucky bounce off Mare makes it 1-0. A relatively early deficit was the last thing the Sabres needed, but they didn't shrink away.
Now right back, the Sabres bringing it across. Pominville shutting up the glass with it. Brought ahead by Brind'Amour. Everyone stands as Brind'Amour moves in. Got it to Stillman. To Brind'Amour. In front on. What a great save, Miller on Williams.
A listless Carolina power play was the only slow-moving part of a very quick first period. 40 minutes remain in the season.
The boards, it's over to Brind'Amour. Brind'Amour cruising right in. Trying to tuck one in front on. It was nuts wide off the defense. Rebound, they can't get it on goal. It's Stillman there. Out in front, Brind'Amour knocked down by a cluster of players. 3 Sabres were across the goal line. Taken by Pominville. Off a defenseman's stick. To the back and a shot fought off by Ward. Rebound tucked across by Pominville. But Ward made the play. Now back ahead is Cullen. Closed off by Jannik, but he battled free. Cullen across, Cullen shot. Oh, a great save by Miller. Well, 5.5 to go, second period. His team down by 1. Go to leak the pass for Roy. Deflected carefully away. Now a Finneganov. Fed one in front. Ludman a shot, save, rebound. And Cam Ward got that one too. Drive by Jen. Score! A drive from the point. A hard bullet shot.
Oh my goodness, in a series where both goalies had really come of age out of nowhere and made great saves up and down the ice, and Ward gets caught leaning just enough to tie Game 7 in the closing stages of Period 2.
Battle around behind, away from Drury. Pinching along is Campbell. Spun one around behind to Hedge. Trying to center, he scores! Jochen Hedge, a bank shot with 3.3 seconds to go!
Jochen Hecht finally finds the back of the net in an ugly, kinda lucky way, but a goal is a goal is a goal. He gave his team the lead basically after the second period had already ended. Anyone would take scoring that goal, no matter how it was scored, even if it was guided into the net by a stork. Both teams had 20 minutes left to seal their fate, to finally break away from the specter of sameness that inextricably bound them together.
Lean rattles it around, and it's Ladd, chased off by Jannik, taking it as Whitney. Fed one in front! Score! Doug Weight has tied the game!
The wily vet Doug Weight caps off his great play in this series with a very well-deserved goal. Both teams' seasons now had only 18 minutes and 26 seconds remaining.
View of the play.
Give away to Mayer. Backhander save, Cam Ward. Started ahead by Cullen. Cross right off by Fitzpatrick. Follow up, Recchi. Gives across to Cullen. Fed it on to Stahl. And it was checked away from him by the defense. Then to Hennigan. Then Stahl with a shot. Knocked down in front by the defense. Scrambled for it there. Coming by Brind'Amour. He scores!
Fitzpatrick can't find it in his feet, and Brind'Amour brings about the second lead change of this Game 7. Buffalo just needed one shot to hit pay dirt and tie it up.
Drury a drive, and he ripped one that went wide. Played back to the outside. It's nudged back out again by LaRose.
The Hurricanes just needed to prevent sustained pressure from Buffalo.
Curls there. Drive by Stillman is tipped away by Miller.
Balls to the wall, everyone.
That got chipped out by Stillman, battled for there, rolled off the rail, Brind'Amour, and a chance for Williams swooping back in. Here's Williams feeding in front, Brind'Amour can't get it home, backhander score! Williams, 4-2!
The 2006 Eastern Conference Finals epitomized the fast, chaotic, energized NHL that ran downstream from both rule changes and the lockout. And in both teams' venues, we saw the crowd respond to its excitement with an energy of its own. We saw incredible athleticism from goalies who had to make do with smaller pads. We saw a slew of chaotic goals from more open ice and faster pace. And, unfortunately, as with all sports, we had to see someone lose. Immediately after Game 7, the OLN crew got Danny Briere to give one of the only on-ice loser interviews I've ever seen. I mean, you can see the Hurricanes celebrating behind him. Briere is a trooper for doing this, but it's also a reminder of how gutting it can be to lose a close series, even if, as Briere mentions, that you were dealing with significant injuries. But that's not to take away from Carolina. They were advancing to the finals because they had given that last 1% of energy, or gotten that last 1% of luck that all champions need to have to get past any obstacle. It wasn't a series full of fighting, or nastiness, or even that many hits. It was a new kind of hockey. It was the product of an NHL that was coming back out of the wilderness and into the light of day, and the world could hardly ask for a better spectacle.